Sonic the Hedgehog has had a pretty rocky history since he jumped to 3D, am I right? Or at least that's what all these dudes on YouTube keep saying. And here I am in a corner, asking where I can find the one other person who actually enjoyed Sonic Heroes. I like Sonic. The first video game I ever played was Sonic. I made a video years back where I played at least part of every single Sonic game ever made up to that point, or at least all of those I could manage to get my hands on. I think it's fair to call me a fangirl, though I never had an OC phase, thank God. Playing every Sonic game isn't something I've kept up with since then, though. I couldn't tell you if Amy Rose is any good in Sonic Origins, or why Sega took the blue boy up to a farm up north, and I'm not even sure if I'll pick up Sonic Superstars yet, though I like what I've seen so far. But what I can tell you is that several of my co-workers have been asking about my thoughts on Sonic Frontiers for a few months now, and back in May, I acquiesced and finally picked up the game for myself. And I'm glad I did. Sidebar, hey North American folks, wanna know what the German version of GameStop is? It's, just GameStop. Das ist kein pro-gamer move. Sonic Frontiers, though, is a good game. In fact, I'd go so far as to call it a great game. Perhaps even the best 3D Sonic game I've played since the GameCube. And do note I've said 3D. Sonic Mania still reigns supreme overall. And hey, if you do hate Sonic Frontiers, that's cool. I still hope you consider hearing my thoughts out here. To me, Sonic Frontiers is something old, something new, something borrowed, and something ChatGPT. It has modern Zelda energy at points you can tackle in a bunch of different ways, and you can just take off at blistering speeds across huge maps. And yet, despite how original and downright fun Sonic Frontiers can be, it still feels like there's something keeping it from reaching its full potential. Of course, spoilers are ahead, so if you haven't touched the game and care about the stories in Sonic games, I'm sure there are at least a few people, then this is your warning. So join me today for this look at Sonic Frontiers, a great game held back by the past, and a look at the intersection of originality and modern nostalgia culture. But first, I'd like to tell you about today's sponsor. Me. Let me explain. Longtime viewers may remember me making a video back in December where I talked about taking an indefinite break from YouTube to move to Germany and focus on my career as a producer. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. I work for Bytro here in Germany, who you may know for games such as Supremacy 1914, Call of War World War II, and Iron Order 1919. And speaking of Iron Order, we're running a Pride Month livestream event on June 30th called LGBTQIO. LGBTQIO is an event aimed at celebrating pride and diversity in gaming. We're using a combination of Better Place and to provide race funds for Christopher Street Day organizations here in Germany and Trans Lifeline in the US. As a huge live LGBTQ+ event featuring a diverse set of creators and organized and hosted by me, an actual trans woman, along with the fantastic team at Bytro. Tune in starting at 3 p.m. CET or 9 a.m. EDT on June 30th on Bytro's YouTube or Twitch channels, linked in the description below and the pinned comment, and watch through the evening as we celebrate Pride with mech battles. And for those who are just here for my personal videos, it's wild I stopped uploading for 6 months and now my channel is at nearly 25,000 subscribers. So launching concurrently today on my second channel is a video based on a Reddit AMA I did over on the Amerixit subreddit back when that was open and live, simply called How I Moved to Germany. It goes over just that, quite literally how I moved to Germany. And then once I hit 25k, I guess I'll release the Art of Failure finale, which I feel like I'll have no excuse to keep in production hell and go back into the void forever, I guess. Anyways, let's talk about Sonic. Wait, sorry, wrong title card. There we go, that's a little bit better, I hope. So, spoilers lie ahead here. Again, I'm going into the story, so kind of a given. But instead of going into the story and gameplay separately like in a traditional review, I want to talk about how they play into each other throughout the game. So Sonic himself plays similarly to in the other Boost formula games. Stuff like Sonic Colors, Generations, and Forces, but he's not exactly the same. It definitely feels similar to those games, and yet it's not exact. Sonic Frontiers does things a little differently with the Boost formula, and most notably, the Boost itself is no longer an attack. That's right, modern Sonic's signature move for the past 15 years has been effectively nerfed, and in the process he's gained an arsenal of new moves that make him feel more powerful than ever before. He can instead shoot shurikens from his feet, blast enemies with homing attack chains, deflect attacks with well-timed parries, and use his drawing tool to make circles around enemies to defeat them. And yes, you can even draw a schlong with it. Confirmed! Sonic also has a skill tree now, along with the ability to level up his offense, defense, overall ring count, and top speed, things that don't only help him in main stages, but also in the supersonic boss fights at the end of each island. And yes, islands, it's not one large open world. The game is instead divided into 5 separate islands, really 4 because the 4th island you go to is a good bit smaller than the rest, and you can tackle them for the most part however you want within the confines of each island, if that makes sense. It's definitely not as open as, say, Tears of the Kingdom, but definitely more open than, say, Pokemon Legends Arceus. See, I'm with it. I know what people are playing. How do you do, fellow kids? I really like that every island is capped off with the supersonic boss fight. I know having a bunch of different supersonic fights perhaps makes the guy less special than he feels in most other games, but I think these fights cap off each part of the adventure well, with some genuinely epic-sized bosses that put the scope of the adventure in view. My only real gripe was finding out that the final boss sequence can vary depending on the difficulty level. Since I've played an absolute ton of Sonic since I was a kid, I just hopped in here on hard mode. But it turns out that if you play the game on a lower difficulty, your final boss fight will actually be cut down. Incomplete, if you will, and honestly that's lame as hell. But to me, that doesn't majorly detract from the game itself being a whole, properly complete adventure. And what an adventure it is! Sonic starts off the game in his plane, accompanied by Tails and Amy. Suddenly a freak storm appears, and the plane is downed. When he comes to, Sonic is wound up on the mystical Starfall Islands. Ooh. He loses his friends, who in reality have been trapped in 3 of the islands and turned into weird holograms. Also, Knuckles is there despite not being in the intro, of his background being explained in depth in a rather well-done 6-minute animated short that Sega released on their YouTube channel to promote the game. I kind of wish this was included in the game proper as well, at least as unlockable. Anyways, once Sonic comes to, the voice of God emanates from the sky, telling us that Sonic needs to explore the islands to save his friends, so off he goes. Something I really appreciate about that first island in particular is a sense of loneliness you feel. Sonic is alone in a vast new land. It's filled with dangerous robotic creatures that he's never encountered, clearly not made by Dr. Eggman, as well as these cute little rock dudes that kind of resemble Chow. Islands 1, 2, 3, and 5 feature a friend who will act as a guide for Sonic. And each of these characters, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Sage, are just characterized so damn well, especially for a Sonic game. One of my biggest gripes with Sonic Forces, the last mainline 3D Sonic game, was always how it featured a bunch of characters, but none of them really did anything worthwhile. Frontiers, on the other hand, greatly slims things down, with a plot that can be summed up in the most Sonic Adventures of ways. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Eggman, and his new ChatGPT-powered daughter uncover and must stop an ancient evil. Oh, and that Sonic Adventure reference doubly makes sense since the cute little stone creatures actually are from the same race of beings as Chaos, the big monster of the week from Sonic Adventure. And now they're trying to make peace and pass on, and yeah, it's kind of a lot and gets a little depressing at times, but thankfully keeps itself mostly grounded, never becomes grimdark or anything. Grounded really is such a good way to describe the characters here. Sonic's voice is noticeably a little deeper now. No new voice actor or anything, it's still Roger Craig Smith. But while Sonic is still very much so, well, Sonic, he's not cracking one-liners in every scene. He engages in conversations with his friends, approaches everything with seriousness, and acknowledges the potential danger of absorbing the strange cyber energy that could be fatal. The stakes are treated as important without the overall tone getting bogged down. I really love how Sonic is growing and evolving as a character throughout the game as well. I mean, it certainly knows it's a Sonic game and that Sonic games are often viewed as kids' games, but it still gives its story some level of respect. And each main island's bit of the story focuses on a different side character and lets those individual relationships between said characters and Sonic shine. Sonic and Knuckles subplot focuses on their at times unfriendly but mostly friendly rivalry. You can tell there's been beef and tension in the past, even if the two clearly have mutual respect for each other. Sonic and Tails' subplot focuses on Tails' self-confidence, and honestly makes me wonder if he's suffering from some form of anxiety. I also really adore prefer that one as well because it cements his and Sonic's friendship as a bond between two found brothers. Oh, and straight up, Frontiers has the best version of Amy Rose in the series. Like, the entire series. She clearly still has a crush on Sonic, sure, but she's not obsessed with him. She's no longer just a manic pixie dream girl with an oversized hammer and nothing more. They made her better than ever before by making one small change to her character. Amy Rose now has personal goals that don't involve Sonic. She's an optimistic part of the story too, talking about what she wants to do when all of this is over. And what I find great among Tails, Knuckles, and Amy's bits is that we know that once the story is over, they're all going to go their separate ways, at least for a while. It's not that they don't like each other anymore or that they've outgrown each other, they just now have their own separate personal goals as characters. Amy wants to make a difference in the world. Tails wants to learn how to exist without feeling like he has to rely on Sonic. And Knuckles feels duty-bound to return to Angel Island. And of course, there's newcomer Sage. Dr. Eggman gets trapped in cyberspace, part of the Starfall Islands that looks like a Windows 98 screensaver. He cannot escape, but uses the data and power on hand along with his big brain IQ to build his greatest creation. Sage is cute, yet kind of emo looking. She's clearly powered by some sort of large language model, though unlike ChatGPT, early in the game she is almost willing and able to kill Sonic. But as the game goes on, she observes Sonic and softens towards him, and eventually convinces Dr. Eggman that the only way for him to not only safely escape cyberspace, but to also prevent the world from being destroyed, will be for him to work alongside Sonic. And it works. There's not a single Eggman boss fight in the game, and yet this is also easily one of my favorite versions of him. As the game progresses, he and Sage's relationship changes from one of an inventor and his creation to that of a father and daughter. It's kind of Pinocchio-esque, except with music from the Sleeping with Sirens guy. Damn, that goes harder than it needs to. Both the Eggman-Sage subplot and the soundtrack, I mean. One more note on Eggman. It wouldn't be a Sonic game without the incomparable voice acting of Mike Pollock giving life to Eggman. His delivery of wonderfully quotable lines adds charm and wit to the game, making each Eggman moment a delight to experience. In fact, here's probably my favorite Eggman moment.
Hello everyone, it is I, Dr. Eggman. I've read your fanfiction and you're all going to hell.
Damn, that was kind of abrupt and weird, right? You could even say that the pacing here got a bit weird for a sec. Am I right? Some parts are a little jank on the pacing side. Let's go back to the Eggman-Sage subplot. Sage dies at the end, and it's perhaps the closest thing to a gut-wrenching moment to ever be in a Sonic game. I think the only reason I was so invested in this particular subplot is due to having its full context. And to achieve that, you must find, acquire, and listen to all 24 of the Egg Memos, which are one of several new MacGuffins found in Sonic Frontiers. And how do you get those, you may ask? Why, through a fishing minigame. Yes, alongside our main 5 side characters, Big the Cat is also here. Don't ask why he isn't a digital mess. Clearly he's a god who transcends our plane of existence. Oh, Froggy. Now, I actually like this fishing minigame. I actually sunk a lot of time to the fishing minigame. In fact, I accidentally cheesed the Chaos Emeralds hunt on the final island by spending an hour straight fishing and buying as many collectibles as I could from the shop, unlocking all of the emeralds in the process. Sonic, please put that thing back where it came from or so help me. But these Egg Memos flesh out how Eggman got into cyberspace, created Sage, and came to see her as a daughter. And I know a lot of players in general probably skipped the fishing minigame, and in the process probably got none of the Egg Memos. In fact, I bet some players probably don't even know these things exist. And why? They're such a great addition to the game. I mean, I guess if fishing isn't your cup of tea, you could play the cooking minigame instead, but I don't think such a story-important item should be locked behind minigames like this. I mean, they aren't required to beat the game, but if you miss out on them, I think the story will likely not hit as hard in the last chapter, which is a damn shame. My suggestion, if I were to fix them, bump that 24 to maybe 40 or 50, and then add some sort of way to get them through the usual gameplay. The item shop in Big's Corner is already useful enough without them tied to it. Now, if this fix was done, I'd still like the Egg Memos to be purchasable, if only because cheesing the game through fishing will always be amusing to me, but giving options is the name of the game here. Speaking of options, is it just me or does this game get a little more linear at points in the back half? I'm pretty sure on Islands 3 and 5 there are emeralds that you have to get at specific points in a specific order instead of as you please. And you know what else is a total pace break? 2D sections in the main overworld. On a whole, I love the setup of the world in Frontiers. Activating shrines will create grind rails that link together the world. Finding the Elder and Hermit Cocos to upgrade your stats doubles fast travel points. The actual mini challenges for activating the shrines are cool, and I will always find Sonic running on a hamster wheel funny. When I'm discovering things, collecting gears to go to cyberspace levels and moving the story along at my own pace, it's great. But when I'm going along in one of the later worlds and say, come across a section that weirdly forces me into 2D, it starts to break apart. Why do we still have these 2D sections in 3D Sonic? It can work sometimes, sure, looking at you Sonic Colors, but here it almost always does not. It's not even that the 2D challenges are necessarily badly designed or anything, just more often than not, I'm somehow ending up in a 2D section while traversing across an island and exploring it. It makes the flow crash from 60 to 0 almost immediately. I also hate it that they force lock the camera angle when you come across them. On a couple of occasions, it even led to some graphical glitchiness, which make me feel like even the game itself wasn't totally on board with these bits. And can we talk about the item collecting to talk to your friends? Having this gate in this way would be okay, they just didn't show up until you had the prerequisite items, but having them clearly visible but unable to be talked to because the game quite literally says so, just kind of cheapens the experience. With all of these things said, I do want to note that Sonic Frontiers doesn't always have these weird pacing issues. Sometimes, especially in the first half, it can really hit a great stride. I was finding shrines and cyberspace levels, defeating big-ass mechanical creatures, advancing forward the plot naturally, and it was really fantastic. And while the back half of the game still has a lot of fun sections, especially the tower bit on Island 4, these issues do become more glaring the closer you get to the end. Not to mention, but let's look at what happens the first time you go into a cyberspace level. It's fucking Sonic Generations again! Dear Sega, I would kindly like to ask you to never show me Green Hill Zone ever again. I know this maybe sounds a bit fangirlish and petty, but it's coming from the heart. While we're at it, I don't want to see Sky Sanctuary or Chemical Plant again either. Those also look just like they did in Generations. This is especially frustrating because Forces also reuse these level designs. It's odd as well because some cyberspace stages actually feature new aesthetics, complete with weirdly realistic tanks and city assets. I mean, those are original, why can't the rest of these levels be original? And at the very least, why give us Green Hill again? Why has Sega felt obliged to reuse the zone in every single Sonic game for the past decade and some? This feels less like bringing in something familiar as a callback for longtime fans, more like a cheap, lazy way to pander to nostalgia. And it's not just here. Random references to past games and the dialogue with some of those wonderful character interactions awkwardly interspersed with lines that feel like, hey, remember when we did X and Y game? I've talked about modern nostalgia culture in the past, and I think I'd like to kindly send a message to game companies operating in this late-stage capitalistic world of ours. I'm sick of you trying to make me feel nostalgic. Nostalgia is a powerful force. It has the ability to transport us back to cherished memories, evoking a sense of comfort and familiarity. Long-running series often build up a rich history, accumulating a dedicated fan base who hold these memories close to their hearts. So it's no wonder that game developers want to tap into that nostalgia and create moments that remind players of the greatness that came before, even if I think it's a desire that has come to plague several long-running franchises across various different mediums. Looking at you, Pokemon. Instead of marketing things towards banking off your players' ever-waning sense of nostalgia, why not instead focus your efforts on creating new, exciting experiences that I can look back on in 10 to 15 years from now and feel some sense of nostalgia for them? This is especially frustrating with Sonic Frontiers because there are a ton of parts of this game that do feel like this. I know I'm going to look back fondly on trading off the controller with my husband, getting weirdly confused by that laser puzzle on the first island, finding out that the main theme is sung by an artist that my partner loves, and having a weirdly lovely experience with this title despite my partner actually not being that into Sonic. Also, sorry for the pace break, but I'm looking at my script right now and my husband has noted that I need to mention that Sonic 2, the movie, is fantastic and should be considered a cinematic masterpiece. So, just putting that out there. Now that I'm thinking of it, maybe the 2D sections in Sonic Frontiers play into this idea of a bold, exciting new experience, somewhat stymied by a desire to cater to nostalgia. Sonic is often considered at his best in 2D games, especially CD, 2, 3, and K, and Mania. Perhaps on some weird level, it's Sega being like, hey, look, this is the same Sonic that you remember. Even though Sonic 1 was the first game I ever played, the first Sonic game I think I really poured time into were the Sonic Adventure titles. I got them both around the same time, so I'm just talking about both generally here. Those were new and different from what came before. I wish Sega was confident enough with Frontiers to let it also be a fully new and different thing. I know that can be scary. I know that some asshole on the internet might pick apart your game bit by bit for a YouTube video, or that you might even get mixed reviews, but your game will still have more of an impact if you approach it with that level of confidence. Sonic Heroes is often considered a mixed bag at best, but it's also a game people my age remember. And Sonic Frontiers is good. I mean it. It deserves to be remembered. From meteor showers to Shadow of the Colossus style climbs up giant beasts, there's a ton that I bet will be remembered, and people will keep coming back to it for years to come. I'm sure of it. But you know what people likely won't remember? Green Hill Zone again, Chemical Plant again, Sky Sanctuary again, an odd verbal reference to Sonic and the Secret Rings. Sega, let's let the appeals to nostalgia end. All this shows to me is a lack of confidence in your own abilities. The future of Sonic lies not in clinging to the past, but in boldly charting new frontiers. And Sonic Frontiers is a testament to the potential that lies within the franchise. With a little more courage to let go of the past, it could truly soar to unprecedented heights. I don't really know how to quite segue from there, but there are a few other things I want to mention. Want to know a reference to past games I really like here? The radio. Yeah, as you go throughout Sonic Frontiers, you'll find music tracks from previous Sonic games, and I think even a couple of new tracks, which you can shuffle through on this radio while you play. I really love this. Don't get me wrong, I love Frontier's own OST, but damn, pretty much every other Sonic game also has a fantastic soundtrack. Even 06 gets some love. Look, that game might have been a dumpster fire, but it had a great soundtrack. This actually reminds me a bit of another Sega title, Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, which itself is actually a Yakuza spinoff. It has a similar feature, albeit featuring music from across a whole bunch of Sega titles. I wonder if this is a sign of Sonic Team taking cues from Sega's Yakuza team, especially as the Yakuza titles seem to be consistently successful. A girl can hope. I also haven't talked about the island biomes. I mean, that's because they're pretty tame, I guess. You get a feel, the forest, a desert, a little bit of volcano, and I guess jungle. Not a super huge amount of variety except for that one deserty one, but you know, I'm not upset. What we do have feels fleshed out, and there are enough runes and cybery things spread around to be fun. I also really like these mini-boss fights. On the whole, that's a big asterisk there. The giant rail one in the desert is cool, as are the ninja ones and even the sumo wrestler guy. Not all of these are good. This tanky one, for example, causes a bunch of sand to swirl around you, and it locks the camera whenever you encounter it in this really high up position that's just awkward, and also disables a lot of your moves. I never managed to beat one of these. It kind of sucks. Also, as well as the trail you have to boost along, annoying as hell, and definitely bottom tier as far as these go, especially as there's a variant of that instead that leaves the grind rails in its wake. I actually mentioned that one earlier because I really like it. I was also going to make a comment here about how, especially in some of the later sections, Sonic could sometimes veer off a homing attack pattern into a bottomless pit, and how despite having unlimited lives, I still found it rather annoying. However, it seems that my Switch Pro controller is finally starting to drift a little bit, so maybe that was the cause of this issue. Between that and the various graphical glitches I sometimes got in the Switch version here, especially weirdly enough in the fishing minigame, maybe this is one I'd recommend you try getting on PS5 if you pick it up. I prefer the feel of the DualSense controller anyway, so I don't know, I'm not salty, you're salty. It's fascinating how often modern entries in long-running series find themselves caught in a delicate dance between nostalgia and innovation. On one hand, paying homage to the past can be a powerful way to evoke emotions and connect with fans new and young. But on the other hand, it can inadvertently hold back a new game from reaching its full potential, overshadowed by the shadows of its predecessors. And I leave you, dear viewer, with these questions. How do you strike a balance between honoring the past of a series and forging a new path? How do you capture the essence of what made the series beloved while pushing the boundaries and offering fresh new experiences? And how do we blaze forward without banking on the past, as I suggested earlier, while still keeping the essence of the series alive and thriving? Goodness, I'm getting tongue twisted because I'm doing this at like 1 in the morning. It's a delicate tightrope walk, and while I certainly have ideas, I am by no means a game designer. I mean, I do actually work for a video game company in a creative role, but I'm not working on Sonic. That's what I'm getting at. For all intents and purposes here, I'm just some girl on the internet who's just trying to convert 5,000 some words worth of script into something watchable. So I guess that's it for my thoughts on Sonic Frontiers. For all of its flaws, and I really do think it has some major flaws, I also think it's one of my favorite Sonic games I've played in years. I can't remember the last time Sonic felt this fast or that I felt so interested in the world of a Sonic game. Though again, after looking at others' playthroughs, I kind of wish I'd gotten on PS5 instead of Switch. But you know, small gripes. Small, graphically glitchy gripes. Now, this is the part of the video where YouTubers would tell you to subscribe or join their Patreon or become a channel member, and while I definitely wouldn't object to that stuff, do note that I'm mostly focusing on my career as a producer, and the only real thing I have planned for this channel currently is the Art of Failure finale. But I mean, if you want to learn about a video game system with ties to a Swedish mafia and a game called Sticky Balls, then hey, help me get to 25k, I guess. I don't know why I'm aiming for that number specifically as one more subscriber goal. It just kind of feels like a nice round number to me, I guess. I also want to thank everyone who has found a channel and even reached out to me after seeing my Pokemon X and Y Where Nostalgia Ends video that I did last year. That's one I'm really proud of, and I kind of wanted to use this video to further expand on a few points I brought up there, while this time talking about a newer game that I actually really like, instead of a 10-year-old game I find to be rather mediocre. I'm not really sure how to ramble on from here, so thanks for watching. Here's my favorite quote from any Sonic game ever. It's something I actually say a lot in real life.
Damn.